You know, sometimes things just don't work out quite the way you hope they will. But you soldier forth and you move on and you do whatever the next step in your plan is, regardless, because you really don't know what else to do with the world. What are the humans doing?
Do you think you're ready? Can you handle the truth? Or are you in denial and demanding more proof? They demonstrate in real time how they're spinning you lies, but no one pays attention, no one opens their eyes. They walk around like zombies with their head in the mobiles, signaling their virtues with a pick on their profile. Yeah. Signaling their virtues with a pick on their profile. So if you think you're ready, you don't need more proof. Conspiracy deniers are denying the truth. They fabricate our problems and pretend to provide the best solution, but we all know they lie. They lied about the weapons and they lied about health. They lied about the fact that they're transferring the wealth. You should really notice how they're pushing the fear. Keep everybody terrified and not thinking clear. Yeah. Everybody's not thinking clear. Keep everybody terrified. Yeah, can nothing. Keep everybody terrified and not thinking clear. When you do, you realize that this is the trick. It's getting really stupid now, they're taking the mic. Said, do you think you're ready? Can you handle the truth? Or are you in denial and demanding more proof? They demonstrate in real time how they're spinning you lies, but no one pays attention, no one opens their eyes. They walk around like zombies with their head in the mobiles, signaling their virtues with a pick on their profile. Yeah. Signaling their virtues on their profile. Hey.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to something that was supposed to be Sasquatch Shills, but seems to be turning quickly into a chilling with Sasquatch. We'll see how this goes tonight. I got a couple of folks backstage we're going to talk to until our illustrious guest decides to grace us with his presence, should he choose to do so. First of all, we have Slug over here. Hey, Slug. How you doing? What's up, bud? ATL, Atlanta Transparency News. That's ATL Transparency News, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. We have Amber Mad World, who probably can't hear us right. Oh, she's gonna eat it up. There you go.
Yeah.
Is the mic submitting yet? Can you force your mic to submit? Jesus, are you okay?
Hey, I'm fine.
Don't go into the light.
I'm going into the light. Yeah.
Don't go into the light.
Let's
No.
do a mistake. Okay.
What's up, John Denicola? Good to see you, bud. Welcome to the
That's
show.
what it is right there. Oh, frig.
All right. So obviously we are shy one guest. And
The main one.
Yeah. So
What's up?
kind of skip ahead to the After Dark section that I have sort of set up.
I hope it's okay.
Well, I mean, if he happens to show up in like the next 15 minutes, we'll roll with it. But if he's more than about 20 minutes late, I'm gonna switch the name on it and we're gonna go with it that way. Because things happen, you adapt. That's all I can tell you. So the name of of it will be American Kaiju and the World's Best Bacon. That's a chilling with Sasquatch right there, buddy. Hello, Mom's Wholesome Videos. Good to see you. So, do you know what a kaiju is? Either one of you?
No.
No.
Okay. So it's part of like some part of the manga / Japanime tradition where giant monsters from Japan are called kaiju, right? So if you have a giant monster in virtually any culture now, it's referred to as a kaiju of some description, right?
I did not know
In
that.
Japan, right?
Well, it started in Japan. The word, the meaning of the word being huge, enormous monster translates pretty good across most languages, and most languages don't have just a general monster term for giant monster, because it doesn't have to be a person, it doesn't have to be an animal, it's just something enormous that's a monster. When you say kaiju,
Japan stole that from us, and rightfully so. I mean, the creator of Godzilla, I mean, that's just historic, you know?
yeah, well, anyway, the first video I have set up over here for us to check out is called The American Kaiju. Paul Bunyan. And I've always thought Paul Bunyan was a terrifying tale. Ceramic, and it's quirky. Hey, Andrew.
Those tires.
What's happening, bud? So let me line this one up. Bingo. All right. So this is before we get into that. This is done by a channel called Just Brandon. He's got 3,000 subscribers. And he's doing pretty good work over here. I'm kind of digging on I mean, he doesn't have a terrible narrative voice. His pacing's pretty good. His visuals are second to none. I mean, he's on par as far as visuals with like Simon Whistler and whatnot sometimes. But you understand what a giant monster is, right? Like a kaiju, that we now know what we're talking about. This dude here would fit the description of a kaiju. Yes, no, yes, maybe.
Well, yeah, what you described.
Okay, that's the premise we're going on. We're gonna check out like it's a 7-minute video, 11-minute video. It's not that long.
You tore my friend group apart. The simple
all right.
The image you see before you tore my friend group apart.
Really?
The simple picture of a towering giant over a forest and the caption, Paul Bunyan a kaiju? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Just Brandon, and today I'm going to shed some light on this mystery and definitively answer this age-old question. Let's start off by figuring out what a kaiju is. Kaiju is a Japanese word that translates literally to strange beast. Originally, this word was used to refer to creatures of legend, but it took on a modern definition in 1954 when the first kaiju film was released in Japan, and the King of the Monsters began his reign.
Godzilla?
Godzilla!
Oh my god, it's Godzilla!
Following the release of the original Godzilla, Kaiju would come to refer to a non-human creature that pushed beyond the limits of nature and displayed divine power. Most mainstream Kaiju are incredibly large, often hundreds of feet tall, but size is not actually a determining factor in if something is a Kaiju or not. The creators of Godzilla and the Kaiju film craze have been quoted as saying that Kaiju is more than merely big animals. It's the use of special abilities or powers that start pushing a creature into Kaiju territory. Also, Kaiju often serve as metaphors for various current events. Popular examples of Kaiju are Godzilla and Rodan, both of which are large reptilian creatures with nuclear breath attacks that both represent the destructiveness of real-life nuclear weapons. Now let's take a look at Paul Bunyan. In the mid-1800s, legend began spreading of Paul Bunyan, a giant, mainly humanoid, standing roughly 200 feet tall, who roamed the North American countryside with his companion, Babe, the equally large blue ox. From birth, Paul was enormous, requiring 5 fully grown storks to carry him to his parents in Maine. As a baby, he required dozens of barrels of food and milk every day, otherwise the rumbling of his stomach would cause small earthquakes, and if he ever went out into the oceans around him, his splashing would create waves large enough to sink ships. Before too long, his parents moved him to the deep, unsettled wilderness of the north where he could exist without accidentally hurting others. Surrounded by trees, he became a logger, and with his immense strength, he was able to clear an entire acre of woods in just one swing. Then, one fateful winter, when it was so cold that the snow itself turned blue, Paul ventured into the wilderness and stumbled on an ox calf, cold, alone, and blue from the falling snow. Paul rescued the calf, named him Babe, and nursed him back to health, but even as he regained his strength, his hide and coat were permanently stained blue from that coldest of winters. As Babe grew up in Paul's care, he grew bigger and bigger until eventually he was just as massive himself. This is where the legend of Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox really takes form. Once fully grown, Paul and Babe traveled the lands of North America, shaping the landscape at their will. Being a logger at heart, Paul would devote time to clearing the vast unexplored forests, and Babe would carry the timber to and fro across the country. The pair are entirely responsible for the deforestation of the area that would become the Dakotas, and in their free time they would create some of the most well-known landmarks in the United States. By dragging his axe across the ground as he walked Arizona, Paul created the Grand Canyon. His and Babe's footprints through the wetlands of Minnesota would fill with water and form the 10,000 lakes. He dug several waterways, including the Missouri River and the Puget Sound, to ship his lumber, and also Lake Michigan as a watering hole for Babe. To shower, Paul shaped the Yellowstone waterfalls, and the Mississippi River was created by accident when Babe accidentally dropped a bucket of water he was carrying. One day, Paul and Babe were playing together, and the force of their roughhousing crumbled the stone beneath them as they collided with it and each other, ultimately forming the Grand Teton mountain range. And when Babe's time would finally come, his burial mound would become known as the Black Hills of current-day South Dakota. Outliving his best friend, and with so much forest cleared that towns could spread across the land, Paul decided it was time to retire. He traveled northwest and eventually settled in the wilderness of Alaska. It's unclear what he's doing today, but we do know that he's still with us somewhere, as every night the moonlight bounces off his trusty axe and dances in the night sky. So now that we know who Paul Bunyan is, and we know what a kaiju is, it's time to compare and contrast.
All right, what do you think? Kaiju or no?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he hasn't shown any supernatural powers.
He made the Grand Teton Mountains just playing with his ox, and he accidentally created the Mississippi when he spilled a bucket of water, and he accidentally created the Grand Canyon by dragging his axe when he was tired one afternoon.
Yeah, but that's using a tool. He didn't do it. He didn't do it by shooting a beam out of his fist. He did it with the tool.
But not on purpose. That is just massive damage from just an errant action. That doesn't have to be a beam, dude. Okay, all right. So you're saying not a kaiju?
Not
a kaiju.
Just a big dude.
A big guy who's clumsy.
All right, let's see which way he comes down.
Trust the two. Let's take a look at what it means to be a kaiju and see if the story of Paul Bunyan fits the criteria. First, let's go ahead and get the issue of size out of the way. To reiterate, size isn't technically a defining quality of kaiju, but it does help in the eyes of the mainstream, and it's pretty easy to analyze.
John Dencola, good to see
you. At roughly 200 feet tall, Paul Bunyan is significantly taller than the original iteration of Godzilla, who stands at roughly 165 feet tall.
That's the movie I want to see. Hold on. Wait a second. Hold on.
The original Godzilla?
The movie I want to see. Paul Bunyan versus Godzilla. Wow. That'd be better.
I haven't done that yet.
Hey, but are y'all familiar with the tall tales of the American West?
Hmm?
Like Pecos Bill, Paul Bunyan, these things.
Oh, yeah.
What was your favorite one?
Okay, Corral.
That's not a tall tale. That's an actual event.
All right.
Pecos Bill, Johnny Appleseed.
Johnny Appleseed. Johnny
Appleseed was my favorite as well. If I had to go for the action adventure type, I'd pick Pecos Bill every time. But Johnny Appleseed was both a real person and a group of people and a tall tale. He was all of the above. Because in the early days of America, one of the only things you could plant in the Americas, or rather, one of the most reliable crops you could plant in North America at the time was apples. And they didn't have the type of apples we have today. They had to plant hundreds of apple trees in order to find a particular apple that was good so they could propagate it. Johnny Appleseed, and I can't remember the man's actual name. I'll do a show on it later. We'll actually cover Johnny Appleseed and the person he actually was. But he traveled all over the Northeast planting orchards of apples, and then in his later life, no bullshit, blew all of that off just to go west and go plant apples out there because he thought it would help people move there. Story goes, he hopped on a train, checked out one afternoon, came back 2 years later, cashed another check, bought some more apple seeds and left.
Could you imagine that? Just walking through the wilderness, stoned off your ass, planting apple seeds?
I would love it.
That's not how he did it. How he actually did it is he would come into a neighborhood, a village or whatever, and he would explain to them that he would like to plant an orchard of apple trees. And they would say, okay, over here somewhere, and he'd tell everybody how to clear it, and he'd have it cleared out, put a wall around it, protection and all that stuff. He'd plant the seeds and put the seedlings in the ground and stick around for a few months to get everything started, and then he'd move on to the next town. On his way back through, he would come through and check and make sure everybody was up keeping the apple trees like they needed to, because after they were alive for a couple of years, you could just turn them loose. They'd survive on their own. They were fine. You know,
imagine being a person like that, traveling from town to town.
Good to see you, bud. Welcome to the show. Now, I mean, I love the idea of just going out and seeing what's what. I love the concept. Like, people ask, why do you climb a mountain? It's because it's there, man. You don't ask why. You just do it. If you want to do it, do it. If you don't want to do it, I'm not making you do it.
Now, where I lived in New York, in upstate New York, I mean, he was a very popular guy because, New York State is all apple orchards when you get, into the northern New York, upstate New York. All apple orchards.
I really, really miss eating apples. You know how Barbosa felt about his apples?
No, I do not.
Barbosa from what is it? The Black Pearl and the Pirates of the Caribbean series, the undead
I know
pirate.
The Black Pearl.
Right. The undead pirate that was captain of the Black Pearl for a long time. That guy, how much he loved his apples. That's how much I loved apples.
Why is it not letting me copy that?
Because it hates you, Emma. It hates you in your very soul.
That's going to make me mad. I'm copying it.
Anyway, this is the movie I want to see. Is Paul Bunyan versus Godzilla, and I want Godzilla to use a train cars like nunchucks.
Is significantly taller than the original iteration of Godzilla, who stands at roughly 165 feet tall. Next, kaiju have to be living organisms, but can't be human. This rule is pretty concrete, and Paul kinda looks human. So is that it? Is this the end of the discussion? No. Here's the thing. The vast majority of descriptions I've found of Paul Bunyan talk of him being human-like or humanoid, specific, but not human. We know that Paul was gigantic right from the very beginning, as opposed to being normal size and growing, so it would make a lot of sense that Paul isn't human at all, but is actually a member of the giant race, a race of large, human-looking creatures dating back hundreds of years ago. Plus, if you'll allow me to go even nuttier than we already are, it's actually canon that the storks who brought Paul to his home came from across the Atlantic Ocean from the direction of Europe and Scandinavia, hubs of giant lore. I'm just saying, it's possible that there was a mix-up, that Paul wasn't even supposed to be in America, and that some human child got raised by giant parents, all by mistake. Anyway, is Paul Bunyan a human? Almost assuredly not, so we're still on track to Kaiju Town. Moving on, let's group points 3 and 4 together. Kaiju originally referred to creatures of legend, and even now are often based on creatures of legend, and they are often representative of larger issues in the world. Paul Bunyan is one of the first true American legends, and based on his character, most likely had similar origins to the impossibly great heroes of other cultures. He is also largely representative of colonization in the Americas, for better or worse. You could interpret Paul Bunyan as someone forging their own path and living the American dream, or as a foreign savior of society in this wild land, or even as someone forced from their home because of towns and cities spreading across the country and taking over the wilderness. All in all, I'd say this is easily another step in the right direction. Finally, we have one last point of contention, and it's a big one. Kaiju need to have some trait, ability, or power that pushes them beyond the limits of nature and into the realm of the divine. First off, we need to clarify one thing. The word divine means very different things to different cultures. I won't claim to be an expert on Japanese religion, but to my understanding...
Lovely. I got too much stuff going on over here. But it's happening.
Yes, Grasshopper, I agree.
Scheduled in the future with one of your He said at the start time. That's weird.
The point here is that Kaiju needs to be comparable to the Shinto gods. Shinto is a polytheistic religion that recognizes a host of specialized deities rather than one almighty god. This means that a god might have absolute control over one aspect of life, but no control over others. They tend to have human characteristics or emotions, and they can be killed by other gods or sometimes even humans. The point here is that being considered divine in this case is more about being supernatural.
What's your favorite Paul Bunyan tale? I have an especially relevant and favorite one.
You're gonna have to give me a second to remember one.
All right, I'll tell you my favorite one while you think. So Paul Bunyan's the biggest guy in camp. He can cut more logs, he can run faster, he can move farther, he could move heavier stuff. He was always winning all of the
chainsaw competitions.
Right. Every week they have a competition for something different, and the winner gets a free breakfast, right? And every week, Paul Bunyan wins the competition. So the folks in the camp get together and they come up with a plan. They're going to beat Paul Bunyan at his own game. They set up a bunch of chairs in the middle of the tent, and everybody has to sit there and do nothing. And Paul Bunyan makes it about 5 minutes before he stands up and walks out. And that's what quitting drugs is like. You have to learn to do nothing. Because anything you do, your brain will twist into drug-seeking activity without your say-so. You don't get to make a determination on that if you're still under the reins of addiction. So you have to learn not to do any of that by simply doing nothing. And that's what it feels like to try to quit drugs, is being Paul Bunyan sitting in that chair doing nothing. Music.
And see, what I remember about Paul Bunyan is a cartoon of a guy with a chainsaw.
Yeah? Huh. Going
after, and it's about the only thing I remember about Paul Bunyan is watching that cartoon as a kid.
That's funny. Because when I was a kid, we was read all these different like John Henry and like Johnny Appleseed and Pecos Bill, who wrangled a tornado. You never heard none of those?
Not wrangling a tornado.
A cyclone is what he called it.
Oh, Johnny Appleseed is the big one that comes to mind.
I'll buy that. There's actually several others that I can't bring to mind off the top of my head right now either, but they were all produced in a book. I think it was called The American Tall Tales, or Tall Tales of America, or something along those lines.
No, there was one about Lake Michigan too. The Great Lake Superior. I can't remember any of those things. I haven't heard those stories in 30, 40 years.
Yeah, no, it's been a long time for me too. I did have a refresher a few years ago when I was reading them to our kids, because I had to go dig those up. I mean, I couldn't stop at just the Greek myths and the Greek tragedies and whatnot.
Where's all that noise coming from?
That's Emma having a fight with her microphone. She's straight up trying to make it submit, and it refuses to go down without a fight.
I need a lapel mic.
See, now we're on a very important part here. This is the part where we separated opinions on whether this guy was a monster or not.
Nobody said he was a monster.
No,
it's whether or not he was a kaiju.
I'm pretty sure the local natives who lived in the Grand Canyon region before he dropped his axe might have thought he was a monster.
Well, this guy was based on a real guy, wasn't he?
Loosely, very loosely. The story behind Paul Bunyan, I can't remember the name. I haven't looked into any of this crap. I just freeballing it out here, But yeah, he was an abnormally large individual who was exceptionally strong, and I don't know so much that the story of Paul Bunyan was based on him so much as the story of Paul Bunyan may have become attached to him, right? The stories were floating around colloquially in the same time period, you know, so did he spawn the stories, or did the stories just attach to him because he fit the bill? You know, large dude, big axe, wore a flannel shirt. That's Paul Bunyan, right?
I'm a lumberjack, and that's okay.
And that's okay.
All the same time period.
Right. So John Henry is another really, really good one because, at least mythically speaking, according to the legends, he accomplished something that should have been impossible, but it killed him to do it. And there's a cautionary tale that it is possible to do superhuman things, but you have to pay for it. It doesn't come cheap. John Henry was the best steel driver there ever was. He was the fastest driller there ever was. He was the best blaster there ever was. But could he beat a steam drill? Technically speaking, yes, but it killed him. So no.
Yeah, so the answer would be no.
Supernatural and impactful on the world rather than being all-powerful or all-knowing. Take Godzilla as a prime example. He is a force of nature, changing the world to the point that he has transcended what it means to be an individual. So, does Paul Bunyan fit within this description? Well, looking back at his exploits, I'd say it's pretty easy to see that he also is a force of nature. In a lot of ways, I really think he would fit in as a polytheistic god. He has his specialties, like terrain and the wilderness in general, which he has the power to bend and shape at his will, and he uses these gifts to cause change on the world. So as far as I'm concerned, I'd definitely say Paul fits the divine bill. But some of my friends have been adamant that he needs to have some kind of traditional power or ability to count as a kaiju. So let's address that. I think there's two possible arguments here. First, if Paul Bunyan truly is of the giant race, which I think is pretty concrete at this point, then he probably has an affinity with the elements of earth or ice, like is common in giant lore. I think Earth affinity makes the most sense here, as it would help explain his unrealistic feats of literally changing the landscape. But Ice affinity would make sense too, considering that he canonically went out into a winter so cold it froze sound and came back like it was nothing. Oh yeah, did I mention that? The winter with blue snow was so cold that sounds would freeze before they could be heard. But considering that there aren't really any reports of Paul performing any traditional Earth or Ice bending.
Wow. Like, that's pretty serious, dude.
Just both freeze?
How sound is supposed to freeze before you could hear it? So cold that sound froze before you could hear it.
I worked when I worked for J&J. We had a freezer inside of the freezer that was at -80.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And yeah, you were only allowed in there for like 5 minutes at a time. You had to do a sign. But anyway,
yeah.
When you went in there, when you took a breath out, you would hear like wind chimes, and it was the ice crystals from your breath. It would come out of your mouth and it would crystallize like instantly. And you were literally, whenever you breathe out, you'd hear like wind chimes, wind chimes, wind chimes. And when you talk, it's almost like it has a staticky sound to it. And
I've never been anywhere that cold, dude. I've never been anywhere that cold. The only thing I can associate it with is, and I don't advise anyone to do this. Don't try this at home, folks. I'm a complete idiot. If you get some liquid nitrogen and you take a straw and you put it close to the liquid nitrogen and you blow across the top of it, it makes that weird crinkling sound that you're talking about. But you got to like blow it kind of into the nitrogen. You got to be really careful doing this crap because it's not safe stuff to mess with at all.
Hey, what you do with the liquid nitrogen, you put it in a styrofoam cup, and you put some water in it, and what will happen is you'll get like that clear liquid. You'll start seeing like a blue liquid on the bottom of it, and what the liquid nitrogen will do will separate out the oxygen in the water, and you'll get liquid oxygen on the bottom of the nitrogen. And you can use that. You can use that as a
no, that makes sense. That actually makes perfect sense because at the temperature of liquid nitrogen, oxygen is liquid at sea level pressure. So it would literally just dissolve it out of the water because the hydrogen is not liquid, but the oxygen is. That's crazy. I had never thought of that.
And then you can make a kick-ass propellant from that. That's the stuff that NASA uses for their
hey, Harry.
rockets.
Harry, I really desperately want one of your stickers to put on StumbleBee.
What's that?
Harry Nuts has made stickers. He's got stickers that say "I heart Harry Nuts," and you know how much I love Harry Nuts. I love Harry Nuts. One of my favorite creators on YouTube. Period. Like out there. He was like my 4th or 5th interview. Like he was right up there with you.
And he's out there in the farmland too, isn't he?
He's in. I'm going to call it Northern California, although that's not quite accurate. That'll get you in the ballpark. Sup, Gypsy? Good to see you, bud. Grasshopper. Erg.
Em dropped out.
She froze up for a minute. She'll probably pop back up eventually. And Brooklyn hit me up just a minute ago. I sent him the link, but I hadn't heard out of him since. Apparently, he doesn't Facebook Messenger much, but that's the only way I have to get in touch with him. So. Oh, you're in North. Oh, yeah, you are on the coast in Northern California, right? Yeah, he's good. No, Harry's got some stuff over there. It's always different. It's always something different. Something. It'd be awesome cars. It might be a backyard barbecue. It might be, you never know. It might be Las Vegas. You never know. All right, we only got a couple minutes of this left.
Bending. Let's drop that for now and move on to point 2. Paul Bunyan has incredible super strength. Even at his size, assuming he has natural giant strength, the feats he can perform are astounding. He has literally moved mountains and rivers. I thought about trying to do a fun segment where I tried to use math to calculate just how strong he is, but honestly, I don't need to. Take a look at this fight scene between Godzilla and King Kong from the newest MonsterVerse movie, and take note that in this series, both of these two are well over 300 feet tall. A handful of buildings are getting toppled over by the force of the fight, but most of them aren't.
That's beautiful, babe.
Several of these buildings are getting hit directly by these kaiju, and some of them are getting hit by the axe specifically, and they're kind of just taking those hits. Paul Bunyan and Babe were just play fighting, just playing together, and the force of their roughhousing was so great that they actually destroyed the earth beneath them to the point that they created a new mountain range. What Paul Bunyan can do by accident while he's playing far exceeds what King Kong and Godzilla are doing to each other in an actual fight. It's not even close. In my opinion, this easily pushes Paul Bunyan into divine territory. But no, apparently, just being strong isn't good enough of a power for some people. So is that it? Is this the end? Is there really nothing else we can say? Well, actually, there is. Paul Bunyan has a secret ability, one he hides in plain sight. Rewind the tape. Beard. As Babe grew up in Paul's care, he grew bigger and bigger until eventually he was just as massive himself.
Bigger and bigger, bigger and bigger, just as massive himself.
Paul is a giant, but what about Babe? He was just a normal ox, so how did he get so big? It was because of Paul's real superpower, the ability to make things grow big. It's often overlooked, but it is canon that any animal Paul looks after will grow to insane size, just like himself. There are multiple cases of this happening, but the most notable, after Babe of course, is Bessie the Yeller Cow. Bessie was just a normal cow that Paul bought and raised, and she grew massive enough to become Babe's mate. Being able to change something size like this is well beyond natural ability, so I think this case is closed.
Hold on a second.
Paul Bunyan is a large, non-human being.
All right.
Now,
I heard that too. I heard that.
It's not abnormal if you have access to human growth hormone to go ahead and grow, and that's not magic. And he didn't do all those things by his will. Yeah. He did all those things by accident. Just like anyone else that could blow a bomb up and make it mountain range.
This is alongside other things. These are just the passing things that he did. When you lay it down next to like the story of him in Oregon, where he wanders around Oregon competing at different logging competitions, where he swarthed the entire western forest. There's parts of Oregon now that used to be forested that are no longer forested, and they blame Paul Bunyan.
Let me tell you something. You give a man enough crack cocaine, and he can do the same exact thing. A little meth, a little crack, doesn't make him divine. It just makes him a crackhead.
Crack is God's answer for people who have too much money, in my opinion. Same thing for cocaine.
But I'm not hearing anything like magic here. Nothing that can't be accomplished with current day technology.
So no kaiju, just a big dude.
I wouldn't put him in kaiju. I'm not saying that he doesn't belong there.
Ancient giants, but a modern manifestation of giantism.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some pretty damn big people in my day.
Some big,
like surprisingly big. You know, it's like, how in the hell did that happen?
I have a cousin who is 6'9", weighs close to 400 pounds, but is built just like you or me. He's not like freakishly weird in any direction. He just looks like a giant person.
Yeah, you come across people like that every so often. They're usually working in the farms and things like that.
He's an accountant.
Well, he's an accountant.
He played the flute in high school.
But he's an accountant for farmers.
I don't know. I haven't looked that far into it. I just know that he decided to become, his mom was an accountant. I guess it makes sense. That
didn't make sense to me.
You wouldn't think so, but 1,000 years ago he'd be a boxer, or he'd be a knight, or but he gets to be an accountant. He's the most mild-mannered person you ever saw. I mean, he really is one of the sweetest guys walking the earth.
Well, the bigger you are, the gentler you got to be. It's you scare people when you're that big.
He is absurdly strong too. We went to go visit a buddy of mine back many moons ago. This is when he was when homie was like, I don't know, 18, 19. He's like 6'7", pushing 350 pounds. He's a really, really big boy. And we go over to see this dude, and we walk in, and homie turns to shut the door and just quite literally snatched the entire doorknob out of the door. It was like one of those crappy old trailer doors, and it just prink. And he just turned and looked at me. I'm like, dude, it's all right. I'm a carpenter. I'll put it back. It'll be all right. Like, I'm so sorry, man. Don't sweat it, dude. I'll come by tomorrow and fix it. It'll be fine, right? And homie was like, yeah, man, I got to replace that door anyway. It's been messing up for a while. So it wasn't no big deal, but just seeing the look on his face of like, I broke something else. God,
Bull in a glass shop, huh?
Yeah, it wasn't designed to deal with an 8-pound ham fist. Oops. So where should I go next?
Well, you never heard back from Brooklyn then, huh?
Well, he asked me what was up. I sent him the link. He hasn't showed up. I don't know what. There's not much else I can do.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to do. So we're gonna roll with it. I got to go see Untethered Live, who's in North Carolina. Amber's Mad World, who is also in North Carolina, but kind of on the other side of North Carolina. So that might not be the same trip. I don't know. I don't know of anyone else in North Carolina specifically. There's an auditor that I talked to online a couple of times, but I can't remember quite where he's at or what the name of his channel is. I'm subscribed to him, and I'm going to have to go find it. And then, of course, there's NC Tyrant Hunter, which I'd have to schedule up with to get that.
You got Georgia Transparency down towards your way.
Yeah, he's actually a little bit closer to Savannah, so that might be a different trip too, because I want to do a handful of relatively close ones before I strike out to like Louisiana.
And what's the there's another one in Georgia here. I haven't heard much from him lately. He had hit in with the sheriff, and he actually ended up suing him, and I think it went his way. But I haven't heard anything much from him. The GCM,
Georgia Constitutional Media.
Yeah, so he used to go on with him a lot. That's not who it is.
There was another guy not too terrible long ago.
Black guy.
Yeah, but no, this was a white dude, and it was like Georgia Constitution State or something like that. It was a weird one. I thought that's who I was talking to when I was talking to GSM at first, and then I saw him and was like, "Wait, you're not the same guy at all." The shit happens. Life sucks. We deal with it. All right. So, who wants to know how to make the world's most perfect bacon? Yeah. Right. All right. So there's different ways to go about handling making of bacon. What it really boils, see what I did there, boils down to.
Part of this video is sponsored by Vital.
Stop it. So there's like several stages of bacon cooking, right? When you're cooking bacon, there's the first part where you start melting the oils. Then there's the second part where you get, okay, that worked, where you actually start dissolving the oils, like the fats actually render out, and then you get to a part where you start crisping it. And during the crisping period, you can have a caramelization period of some amount of time depending on how hot you're cooking the bacon. So all of these elements come together to create your perfect bacon, which is different from anyone else's. My perfect bacon is not like your perfect bacon.
Vital Farms. How do you cook your bacon? Because I bet each one of you watching probably have a different answer. Some may say, start it in a cold pan. Some may say, no, start it in a hot pan. Some may say, screw the stove, throw that bacon in the oven. Or maybe you've been convinced by the TikTok trend and have started cooking your bacon in water. So in today's video, we're going to do a deep dive into the world of bacon. What's the important food science to know? Why this graph I made is hugely important. And finally, we'll do a taste test to see if there is actually any noticeable differences between the methods. And spoiler, I came in as a little bit of a skeptic in this video, but was pleasantly surprised by one of the methods. Great chew, but so much more tender. Oh.
But what's your favorite method?
Well, I don't like the pig belly bacon too much.
Right. Now,
like
you know what my favorite is? They make a beef bacon that is awesome. It's not quite so greasy either. It is amazing stuff.
Yeah, I like the Italian bacon, the prosciuttos and
right.
pancettas.
Yeah.
Things like that. They just have a nicer flavor to them.
That dry aged stuff is amazing, though. It really is.
Oh my gosh.
It's hard to get upset with a piece of bacon.
The Bacon Chronicles.
Now, as you may suspect, in making this video, I had a ridiculous amount of leftover bacon to use up. And thankfully, Vital Farms sponsored this portion of the video and provided me with some eggs that made some of the best bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches I've had in a long time. But this may lead you to wonder, why should you be choosing Vital Farms eggs? Well, Vital Farms is a certified B Corporation, and they have a purpose to improve the lives of people, animals, and the planet
we care about?
Food. For example, Vital Farms rotates their pastures, over 8,400 acres of them, to the bacon. So before we actually dive into testing, we need to first understand two critical pieces of information. One, how does bacon get crispy in the first place? And secondly, where do you exist on the chewy to crisp spectrum? Because answering these two questions will inform us on what tests are even worth trying in the first place. For reference, bacon is a fatty cut from the pork belly, and the belly is cured in a mixture of salt and spices to draw out moisture, and then is often smoked for flavor before being sliced and sent off to the market where we pick it up.
Now, regardless of which method you choose.
And if you haven't tried any beef bacon, like, it's a thing that exists and it's something everyone should try. It's not exactly like pork bacon. It's different, but equally freaking delicious. It's unbelievable, and it caramelizes beautifully.
What do they use? The flank?
I think it's actually the same cut of the animal. It's that belly portion that is used like it would be from, it's the brisket in a cow. That's what they call it. And it's a smoked and aged brisket. And oh my God.
Oh, yeah. Brisket is a damn, yeah. I'll tell you what, it upsets my stomach, the beef brisket. I love it a lot, but I mean, damn if it doesn't hurt my stomach.
Yeah, but I mean, that's because you eat it and you eat it some more because it is good stuff, brother. But imagine if it had been dry aged and smoked. And you know how that almost creamy consistency to, oh man, you throw that on the pan. You don't even have to cook it. You just throw it.
When I make it on the grill, it takes like 5-6 hours.
Yeah.
I just let that thing sit in there, and it just it's this beautiful red color to it. Starts talking to you.
Dude, I ain't ate yet. I don't eat until after the show. So bacon.
To cook your bacon, it needs to go through the same 4-step cooking process. 1, the fat melts. 2, the collagen turns into gelatin. 3, moisture evaporates. And then 4, it begins to brown via the Maillard reaction. And these 4 steps have a massive effect on the taste and texture of our bacon. But before we get into that graph that I mentioned earlier, we need to go a little bit deeper and understand the temperature ranges for each of these steps. So uncooked bacon is a mixture of white fat with streaks of lean meat, but as soon as we start to apply some heat, it begins to transform. And that first step, the fat begins to melt. So pork fat will begin to render at around 130 degrees Fahrenheit, which is important to the bacon cooking process for a couple of reasons. First, in terms of texture, rendering turns inedible raw fat into melt-in-your-mouth goodness, and this rendered fat is what makes the bacon seem moist and kind of disintegrates when it hits your mouth and warms up. Secondly, in terms of taste, fat transports flavor and aroma molecules, and the high percentage of rendered fat in bacon is what makes it so tasty. All those brown bits from the browning mixed together so we can taste the full spectrum of bacon flavor. And then third, from a cooking perspective, the rendered fat coats each bacon piece, which evenly distributes the heat, allowing the bacon to continue to raise in temperature and go down through the 4 steps of the cooking process. Now, the important thing to keep in mind with all of these steps is that they continue to happen throughout the cooking process. So that fat is going to continue to render as it increases in both temperature and time. That being said, the next key step starts to happen at around the 175 degree mark, which is where collagen begins to slowly turn into gelatin. Bacon, just like any cut of meat, has connective tissue that holds it together, which is primarily made of collagen. And collagen is what provides the chewiness to the meat. However, at high enough temperature and with enough time, collagen will slowly begin to break down and convert to gelatin. So why exactly does this step matter? Well, this one is all about the texture. As the collagen fibers become luscious and melty gelatin, in theory, the bacon will become more tender, giving it a nice texture with the crispy exterior and rendered fat. Now again, an important item to remember is that this reaction needs temperature and time. So just like how a braised short rib is tough at 2 hours but magically pulls apart at 5 hours, the theory is the same. And this idea is actually where running tests on bacon becomes a little bit of an issue when objectively trying to compare methods. We'll get there in just a second. But next up on the temperature list at 212 degrees is where moisture evaporates. If you have ever wondered why bacon spatters and shrivels up, that's because of the moisture evaporating. So as the bacon cooks, the lean muscle fibers start to tighten, which releases the water molecules that is inside the raw bacon. And that water, when heated to 212 degrees from the fat that is rendered, evaporates, creating those beautiful bubbles. And in general, the higher the heat, the more rapid evaporation and potential bacon splatter. Now, by all this water being released, we're actually partly dehydrating the bacon, which is part of the reason it's going to get crisp. Like if you were making bacon bits, for example, yes, it does get crisp from the browning itself, but provided you cooked it long enough, you've actually pushed out all the water in the bacon, leaving you with a completely crisp piece that can be crushed up into bacon bits. The bacon won't begin to brown until it gets above 212 degrees on the exterior, and the Maillard reaction is our next step, and this rapidly occurs in the 280 to 330 degree range. And all I'll say now is remember steps 2 and 3 when we begin to talk about how adding water to your pan of bacon can affect the cooking times. But lastly, let's talk about my favorite reaction in cooking, the Maillard reaction. Have you ever wondered why the smell of bacon can smell so tantalizing that it can pull you out of bed? Or when you finally get that first bite, you are overcome by the subtle but complex flavors? Well, a big reason why is a product of the Maillard reaction. As noted in On Food and Cooking, the Maillard reaction is responsible for the cooked color and flavor of bread crust, chocolate, coffee beans, dark beers, and roasted meats. And the key temperature to know, like I mentioned, is that the Maillard reaction will occur noticeably and rapidly once the bacon enters the 280 to 330 degree range. And I could do a whole separate video digging into the delicious science of this reaction, but just know that this is what gives us that savory, crispy experience we love, and if bacon never reaches those temperatures, it's gonna remain kind of limp. Okay, so hopefully I didn't lose you, but we really needed to go through and understand all of those steps because it helps us get down to the...
Long time no see there, brother. What you been up to? Not too busy, I hope. How you doing?
Fundamental crux of the matter, which completely changed how I originally thought I was going to make this video, and it's quite simple. Every technique we choose to cook bacon really boils down to controlling just 2 things. 1, temperature, and 2, time. And the key to making bacon to achieve your ideal chewy to crispy state comes down to managing the temperature of the heat source, which impacts the timing of these cooking steps, so we can control when and how long the steps take to unfold. And for me, this graph I made to visualize this set light bulbs off all over the place when it comes down to what's actually worth testing. Let's throw temperature on the y-axis and time in minutes on the x-axis. Next, I'm going to overlay the key temperatures at each step, and here...
Well, you know I absolutely support every aspect of your artist career. Do that stuff. I'm not sure who it was that tickled your pickle in the wrong direction to start with, but dude, you've got talent and skill. You should exploit that shit to the max. It's a thing you can do that absolutely amazes me. Just phenomenal. Have you seen his work? This is it. This is an abstract look.
Yeah, I watched him paint him a couple of his paintings online.
Yeah, I think this is the first painting he actually uploaded to YouTube. If I'm not mistaken, is that right? I think he did it in a static filming and then uploaded it. And then later he started doing some live ones, and I really enjoyed those. It's absolutely magnificent. So, bacon.
Here is where it gets fun. So I'm going to pop in some theoretical data for 3 different methods of cooking bacon, and I want you to take a guess on what these may look like from a texture perspective. First, we have the speed run. Raw bacon that was added to a pan over high heat and cooked just before I saw a spot that would burn. Second, the steady Eddie. Raw bacon added to a cold pan over medium-low heat and then cooked until just browned. And then lastly, we have the low and slow. I popped some bacon in the oven at 280 degrees Fahrenheit all the way until it was browned and crisp. And as you could guess, each of these had remarkably different cooking temperatures and times, leading to different tastes and textures. And here they are. On the left, we have a lightly brown piece, but obviously still quite chewy. On the far right, we have a deep brown piece, and all the water has evaporated, so it's completely crisp. Then, our steady Eddie is somewhere in the middle of those two. So I haven't shown you how adding water to your bacon pan will affect this, but You should be able to guess that now. Using that same graph, water will quickly heat the bacon up to that 212 degree mark, but then it's just going to ride that temperature until all the water evaporates. However, during that time, the fat is still rendering and the collagen is transforming into that gelatin. Then as soon as the water evaporates in the pan, the fat that is left there will quickly heat the bacon up where it starts to brown. So this graph basically explains every method of cooking bacon. And it presents me with a little bit of a problem because the perfect slice of bacon exists somewhere on that graph, but you'd probably have to do hundreds of tests to actually find it, and you'd be splitting hairs in the process. For example, regardless of the technique chosen, I could do 5 different oven batches, 5 different pan batches at 5 different times, 5 different temperatures, and using different thicknesses of bacon. Because if you were to use a thicker cut bacon, it's gonna need more time to render the fat, it's gonna have more collagen, more water, and take longer to brown. So in order to narrow the scope for us home cooks, I decided to test 4 methods in a blind taste test. These are the microwave, a cold pan, a pan with water, and the oven. Now, when it comes to figuring out which of these are best, for me, that really comes down to optimizing 2 categories. 1, texture and taste, and secondly, lifestyle considerations. And the first category is something we uniquely have to figure out for ourselves. And here's a fun little experiment that you can also replicate at home. I added 6 slices of bacon to a sheet pan and then slid them off into a preheated 375 degree Fahrenheit oven and took 1 slice off at 5-minute intervals. And it's really cool because we can clearly see the differences. Remember, these stages are happening at varying times, so we create this entire spectrum of chewy to crisp bacon. Now, here's the big question. Let me know down in the comments, what does your perfect piece of bacon look like? For me, I still like some chew to mine, so the 15 and 20-minute slices are what I would look for, but some of you may like it even chewier, some of you may want it completely crisp, and I'm not here to tell you what you should or should not like, but this is the question we need to answer so we can figure out what we should actually test. Additionally, when it comes to lifestyle considerations, we need to think about things like what type of bacon do I have? What am I going to be using it for? How much do I need to make? How much time do I have? Or is my stove finicky with maintaining heat? And all of these things are going to matter more or less depending on your unique situation as a home cook. But now that we understand that fundamental underlying food science, we have the power to dial in the consistency of bacon to make it exactly how we want it, especially in terms of texture. So let's get to testing.
All right. So the way I go about this is I have a flat iron griddle called a Spider. It's probably 200-year-old piece of cast iron. I have another one that is a pack pan that is made, I think it was made by a Lodge. It may have been an ashtray at one point in time, but I've re-seasoned it and I use it as a bacon press. So I put my pan down, heat both of them up to not quite burning something hot. And then I put the bacon in and set it down in between them. And it's done in 9 minutes or so. It's not long. But you can walk it through there pretty quick. But you're right. He's right. It does have to have a certain amount of time if you want it to brown. It won't do it no matter how hot you get it. You can't brown it. You're muted, honey. And you muted yourself, so I can't unmute you.
I mean, is there a bad piece of bacon? I mean, I'm not talking about raw bacon. I'm cooked bacon here. I mean, it's kind of hard to say, hey, which one do you like the most? It's kind of like a moot question. It's bacon, you know? I don't know.
I like smoked meats in general. I really don't give a damn what type of meat it is. Smoked fish is really good. It's really, really good if it's done right. One of the funniest things I ever saw was a lady fixing to cook some smoked fish, and she grabbed a hold of this big ass mallet and went and whacking damn fish with the mallet. And I was like, okay, apparently that's part of how you break it up so it'll absorb water faster or something. I don't know. It's an integral part of the cooking process somehow. But I've never really smoked any fish myself. It's too humid around here to really pull that off. You have to use an active smoker. You can't just do it over a fire, really.
So what's this guy going to come up with next year about the bacon?
Well, he's going to go into the distinctions between the different types of bacon and how to determine what type you would like.
You don't have smokehouses down by you?
Yeah, we do, but there's not a whole lot of them to speak of. And so, like, when you're gonna smoke fish or whatever, you do kind of need a really big area to do it in. It's easier to do a lot of fish than a few fish. You know, you're gonna try to smoke a dozen fish. I don't know. It just seems more difficult than worthwhile, I suppose. We don't really smoke fish here. It's just too humid. Once you smoke it, where do you store it? You're supposed to be able to store it like in the corner or in your cellar. You don't have to refrigerate it. But here you would still have to refrigerate it because it would absorb water from the air and start growing fungus.
Mm-hmm.
Almost immediately.
You don't have cellars down by you, do you?
Not a whole lot. It's very swampy, so the cellars don't happen much. There's a few.
And the water, it comes in. I mean, even here where I'm at, up in the mountains in western North Carolina, we get flooded quite often.
Yeah.
Especially in the fall.
Bacon.
Fucking bacon is the shit.
Now, for all of this, I'll be using a standard cut thickness bacon and cooking them to as close as I can to my desired doneness. And these are the questions that I want to answer. First, what's the absolute fastest method? Which is probably the microwave. But
it's gross.
Bacon tastes good side by side the others. And then I'm curious, does adding water to the pan dilute the taste of the bacon at all? And lastly, are there noticeable texture differences when it comes to the different methods?
Welcome, Blue Unicorn. He's got this herb. Does he just? I saw. No, maybe not. Maybe I'm high.
Let me blindfold and I'll shimmy all these around, and we'll see if there are noticeable differences between all of these. Okay, let's start with this one.
Sounds like when I smoke fish, I use a bomb.
Minutes.
All right, number 2.
But that is one thing I can say for certain. Having
tell the difference between those two.
Bacon iron does not cook the bacon faster. It doesn't.
Putting it in a microwave don't cook it properly either.
That's got to be the microwave one.
That should be that's a straight abomination, I think.
I'll talk about it after why I think that's like that.
George Foreman does good with bacon.
Yeah,
no. Bacon.
Foreman bacon. Yeah, no, that
hands down my favorite.
That was genius.
Wow, great chew, but so much more tender than
tuna and bacon.
I guess this is the oven one because, well, let's just see. So between these two, like, you could have gone either way on this. I honestly have no idea. So I'm assuming these are the pan. This was the microwave. This was the oven. Oh my gosh. I was pleasantly surprised. All right. Well, that was completely fascinating. So this was the pan, cold pan.
Yeah, no.
This was the oven. This was the microwave, which microwave could be good for like a very specific circumstance. I'll probably never microwave my bacon. And then the water one was by far my favorite. It had the perfect.
I smoked all day either. Izzy, cut me some slack.
Which now that I'm thinking about it, and like if you think about the graph, it would have quickly gone up to 212, but then it would have stayed the most time in that area before it actually starts getting to like the crisping and browning. So that, I guess that would make sense why this one is so much tender. But I
actually, that graph shows something else here too. Notice the crispy tender point is about the same regardless. Don't you know they're a battle anyway? The length of time spent in the so the water time would remove some of the cold earlier in the cooking process, resulting in a quicker crisp. It shows it right there on the graph. I'm sorry. I apologize.
But water meats are always good. Like hot dogs, kielbasa, sausages. When you cook things in water, bagels, all your water.
I love bagels. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's because
I love bagels.
You get that nice texture and everything. That's water that makes your food taste like that.
Yeah, I know. Emma's got a lot of stuff going on over there behind her. Can you mute, babe? Let me finish the video.
No, I'm beside the TV. I'm so sorry. Yeah, hold on. Let me find that shit. My bad. I'm so sorry. I just realized it. That's how.
Yeah, that's why we mentioned
But
it.
you hit to mute the TV. Boom. There we go.
All right. Couple more minutes left.
In that
If it's
area,
quicker than that,
it actually starts getting to like the crisping and browning. So that, I guess that would make sense why this one is so much tender. But I 100% thought that was the oven. Like, I'm a big oven bacon guy. That's typically what I do. But wow, very, very surprising. So in conclusion, hopefully you guys know exactly how to manipulate bacon to your exact chewy to crispy needs. I hope you have enjoyed. That is going to wrap it up for me in this one. I will catch you all.
That's pretty much going to wrap us up in this one too, folks. I don't really have anything for an after dark. I'm going to put on some probably Stargate. What did I say we was going to watch tonight? It wasn't Stargate.
I swear we said we did not. So we were going to do something different, but I don't remember what it was because I'm.
Anyway, all right. So Emma, I'm going to start with you.
No,
I mashed the wrong button. You do the thing. Where's the thing? There's the thing. Bam. Tell them who you are.
I'm M or Embers or Emma. Any of them I'll answer to. And I'm the creator at M's Mad World. And I hang out with these guys on my spare time because I got nothing better to do.
Fantastic. All right, Slug, tell them who you are.
I am ATL Transparency, and I'm catching some dirty-ass cops and school administrators abusing kids and getting away with it by using a badge and gun. These are some dirty motherfuckers down here abusing children and using the power of the government to get away with it. Cobb County, Georgia.
All right. And he is, folks, he's putting in a good fight. I love every bit of the stuff that he's doing. I hate that he has to do it, but if somebody's got to do it, it looks like the right person might have the job on this one. Hey, Michelle, welcome to the show. We're fixing to sign off. We're walking out the door as we speak. There was a link over there. I'll toss it back out if anybody wants to come watch a show with me. I'll be in and out eating and stuff, but we're going to put on some entertainment in the background and talk about things we can't talk about on YouTube. That's the plan. So that's the way that goes. This, where'd it go? I got to stop moving these things, right?
Sorry. Good news, though. We're going to have to move the party somewhere a little bit more private, but you're all invited. Lorenzo will give you the details. Yeah!
Just getting started. I know that you want it, baby. Just get on it, ready to go. We know how to party. Pull up.